Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. Today I want to talk about the sad story of Jordan Neely. Um, Jordan Neely lost his life tragically on a New York subway um, by the hands of Daniel Penny. I believe that's yeah, Daniel Penny. And Mr. Penny, well, I'm going to get into that in a minute. So before I get into it, I want to ask, how are you guys doing? I hope all is well. I hope your day is going great. This story is a bit sad, so I kind of want to give a trigger warning for you before we go ahead and get started. I'm going to share an article with you, and then we can get into the deets and kind of share our thoughts and opinions on it, okay? So let's just get into it. Um, The death of Jordan Neely on the New York subway has sparked an outrage, reflection, and a broader discussion on public safety, mental health, and the consequences of inaction. A vibrant street performer known as the uncanny Michael Jackson impersonations, Neely's life and untimely death exposed cracks in society struggling to balance empathy and scrutiny. On May 1st, 2023, Jordan Neely boarded the subway car in Manhattan, visibly distressed, most people noticed. Witnesses reported that he was shouting about desperation, hunger, and that he was in pain. While his behavior alarmed some passengers, it did not warrant any violence. It did not warrant the violence that followed. Daniel Penny, a former Marine, restrained Neely in a chokehold for nearly 6 minutes. For 6 minutes. An agonizing duration that proved to be fatal. The prolonged restraint caused Neely's death, turning what might have been a moment of intervention into a tragedy. To hold someone in a chokehold for 6 minutes is not a split second decision. It is an action that requires sustained force and intent. Experts have noted that in the situations involving restraint and time matters. The line between subduing and endangering a life is a thin razor one. For nearly 6 minutes was way too long. 6 minutes took his life. A period that could have allowed for de-escalation, compassion, or even intervention by other passengers or authorities. Neely's actions on the subway was a cry for help. It wasn't a threat. His life was marked by severe mental health challenges, including schizophrenia, PTSD, stemming from the murder of his mother when he was just 14 years old. He cycled through shelters, hospitals, and jails, unable to find a stability in the system. Neely's behavior was not unique. It was symbolic of countless individuals who grapple with mental illness and homelessness in public spaces every day. His death forces society to confront uncomfortable questions. How do we respond to the mental health crisis? When does fear override empathy? And what role should bystanders play in situations of an escalating conflict? The legal case against Daniel Penny has divided public opinion, obviously. Some argue that Penny acted in protest of others. Some believe his actions were excessive and rooted in prejudice. Penny's acquittal of criminal negligent homicide reignited debates about the accountability of those who intervene in public altercations, especially when individuals involved are among society's most vulnerable. You see, Neely's death is not an isolated incident, it is a system of systematic failure. New York City, like most urban centers, struggle to address overlapping crises of homelessness, mental illness, and public safety. Advocate groups calls for increased funding for mental health services, more supportive housing, and training for first responders and civilians to learn de-escalate techniques. 6 minutes is entirely too long for anyone to be held in a chokehold. It is also too long for society to ignore the growing needs of its most marginalized members. Neely's death is a stark reminder that in action, whether it's failure to provide adequate mental health care or the decision to intervene when unnecessary force is being used. Neely was more than his struggles. He was a talented performer and a person with dreams and emotions and worth. His life and tragic death challenges us to rethink how we treat the mental health crisis in public spaces or at all, and how we define accountability for actions taken in moments of fear. As conversations continue around this case, one thing is clear: 6 minutes is too long. It's time for systematic reforms that prioritize compassion, understanding, and humanity of every individual. Jordan Neely deserved better, and so does everyone who finds themselves unseen, unheard in a system that has failed them. So, how are you feeling about this? Me personally, I agree with it entirely. This is a very sad story, but it goes on more than you think. And it doesn't make the news. There's a lot of people out here struggling with mental health issues, and Jordan Neely was one of them. And 6 minutes was entirely too long to hold anyone. I don't care how you put it, entirely too long. And why didn't anyone do anything? Why did the public just stand by? No one did anything for 6 minutes. 6 minutes is a very long time. It's a very long time. It's a very long time. And somebody should have done something. And it's really sad. This man struggled with schizophrenia and PTSD. This kind of reminds me of the Redding story. I don't know if you guys seen my previous video on Mr. Redding, um, the gentleman that jumped across the court, the judge's desk, and he jumped over there because he responded to what she said at court, her judgment, or before she can even get her judgment out. But that guy, that gentleman, he also had schizophrenia, and it caused him to react in a particular way because he had not been on his meds. Now imagine Mr. Neely. He had schizophrenia and PTSD, and he was homeless. He had no access to meds, no access to therapy, none of that. He was going through something. And yes, it can be scary to see someone like that out here on the streets. It can be, where they're yelling things and you don't know what's gonna happen. But I feel like people should be trained nowadays and educated on how to deal with people with mental illness, just like anything else. Like people are trained to deal with people who have strokes, heart attacks. Like you can tell the signs in the face where the face drops, or maybe the speech changes, and that you could tell that a person is having a stroke or something like that. We need to be trained and educated, and most importantly, we need to talk about mental health more so we can be educated on things of this nature and these signs, so that these tragic things don't happen. And I understand from the general public saying, well, this man was protecting people, but what happened? Did Neely touch anyone? You know, what happened? He was just yelling things. And he said he was going to do things that was scary. Yes, I get it. But that didn't happen. That didn't happen. So I don't know. That's just how I feel about it. You guys know how I feel about mental health. I hold that very close to my heart. Let me know how you feel about this story down in the comments. Until next time, peace.